Christmas, we talk about a list. Usually it's Santa drawing up a list. This time it's the European Union.
It might be on tariffs. What sort of tariffs the Europeans will have in case Donald Trump imposes 10% additional tariffs on European goods, which is something that he has mentioned. And indeed, that is the expectation when you think about a potential Republican win stateside. However, regardless of who is the next president in the White House, the Europeans are very much prepared for American protectionism. So when you think about a potential Democrat win and about potentially seeing Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States, European officials believe that she is likely to continue some of the policies of Joe Biden. And for instance, when you think about what has happened over the last couple of years, the Inflation Reduction Act comes to mind. At the time, European officials were expressing their concerns very vocally so about what that policy would mean for some of European business, potentially flocking to the United States as well. So when you think about what is likely to happen in the United States, as we're seeing the polls, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump neck and neck, really, Europeans are prepared for any eventuality. So let me share some comments from some of the European officials I had a chance to speak with. One said, Trump cannot surprise us anymore. We know how to handle him. We have had to deal with him before. So no surprises there in case that's the outcome of the election. A second voice said, there's no panic. We're being very pragmatic. But of course, we have to prepare for both scenarios. So let's see. We're not far from that election now. And then, of course, how European leaders will be reacting.
Economic nationalism, make America great again, that type of sentiment would potentially be perceived as negative for Europe, and particularly as we talk about global coordination. I mean, if we have fragmentation on trade, if we're being attacked by a potential Trump presidency, where does that leave our ability to tackle climate change, the war in Ukraine, Middle East, and every other major issue we're tackling right now, China, of course, too?
100%. And that's one of the criticisms also that the European Union has received when applying tariffs on Chinese EVs. Are you actually preventing us from doing further progress when it comes to sustainability targets? Ultimately, though, it's not just in the US that we are seeing this protectionism. Europe itself is also coming up with ways to revamp its economy that look very much protectionist. You know, think about China as well. So I wonder what all of these policies are, the impact that all of these policies are likely to have on global growth. And you were at the IMF meetings. There's clear concerns about what's the next phase, and multilateralism is no longer on the table. That's the reality.
Yeah, and also what it does to the economic cycle, because one of the big messages from DC the other week is, look, growth has been resilient despite the odds. Inflation, we're not having any victory parties just yet, but there are really hopes it's coming back to target, and in many countries, in fact, below target. And it's that slippage below target, as you see also the unwind in economic growth, makes policymakers concerned that maybe they should be responding to the next crisis around growth. If it is a Trump presidency, you do wonder whether this just disrupts everything. It disrupts growth, it disrupts the inflation targeting again.
And speaking of inflation, actually, one of the takeaways when I was, following your coverage last week was very much how now we're witnessing this different approach when you think about the Fed and the ECB. Those growth concerns, when you think about Germany, when you think about France, are actually now posing the question whether the ECB is going to undershoot the inflation target, whether they might have to cut rates by 50 basis points in December. And that is something that we are no longer seeing investors concerned when you think about the Fed and whether they're going to achieve inflation targets and so on. So could there be further inflationary pressures from this protectionist approach? Yes. How will central banks react? We'll see. But also depends how deep these measures are going to be.